It's common throughout human history. Every single civilization, it failed because either it couldn't channel power, it was less powerful technically from an engineering point of view, right? Or because it couldn't channel capital, like economic power, and its monetary systems were completely defective, or they were inferior, right? The society that trades glass beads gets stomped on by the society that trades metal coins, and the ones that trade gold coins stomp on the ones that trade copper coins. And then even then, you believe that gold is money. The Spaniards go off, conquer the New World, they bring back all the gold. It doesn't solve the problem because they inflate the gold supply by a factor of 5, so they created hyperinflation. Their own economy collapsed, and the Spanish Empire collapsed because they didn't understand the implications of inflating the money supply.
Today's video was a clip from my interview with MicroStrategy founder and the king of Bitcoin himself, Michael Saylor. If you want to see the full interview, it's packed with Saylor's predictions, why he thinks $400 trillion is coming for Bitcoin, and finally Saylor's advice. Hit that first link in the description to check it out. I'd strongly recommend it. Also guys, before we jump in, if you want to stay most up to date on the crypto and Bitcoin world, make sure to subscribe to our daily 5-minute crypto newsletter, The Crypto Nutshell. It's a daily email that gives you the top expert predictions, any breaking news, and top on-chain analysis all in a nutshell. We write it up every single day and send it to you for completely free. All you have to do is click the first link in the description, enter your email, and you'll get our email into your inbox every morning completely free. It'll make you a better crypto investor in 2024 and will make sure you stay on top of all the news in the space. But without further ado, let's jump in with Michael Saylor.
I used to read excerpts from The Story of Civilization to new employees on their first day. And so I read about that, and that stuck with people. Now, I would say what I do very often is I listen to the audio versions of books and audio histories. And one thing I've been doing is rereading/listening The Story of Civilization. So that's the history of Western civilization by Will and Ariel Durant. And it's a dozen volumes, 1,000 pages each volume. It takes about 50 hours to get through each one. And, it's our Oriental heritage and the life of Greece and Caesar and Christ, and the history of Rome, and in the Middle Ages, the Age of Faith. Right now I'm listening to the Age of Voltaire, and I think it's really, really constructive to do this for a couple reasons. First of all, now you can, when I'm on a treadmill or walking down the street or in a car, I'm listening. So I feel like I accomplish more with my time than if I listen to the same song on repeat 98 times, even though I enjoy the song, but it's like 98 times the same song. But the second thing is, when you study the history of the world, whether it's the story of Western civilization or Murray Rothbard wrote some really detailed books on the economic circumstances in the United States before Revolutionary War called Conceived in Liberty, or he wrote an Austrian economist view on the history of economic thought, and so the history of economic thought for thousands of years. And when you listen to those things at the age of maturity, you understand better and differently than when you, first of all, I didn't read it, in my teens or 20s, and now I do read certain things. But the second thing is, if you've lived long enough, then when you read the stories again, you understand what happened, and it makes a lot more sense. And it's very relevant to Bitcoin because as you see the tension between chaos and order, and between authority, those wishing to impose authority, and then those wishing to promulgate freedom. And also, it helps you to overcome a lot of tropes, a lot of cliches. For example, people have been creating money, our currencies, for thousands and thousands of years. And in just about every single one of these stories, it always starts with a new ruler, a virtuous society, a new currency. They keep it strong, they expand, everybody trades in the currency, then they expand some further, then they have to fight a war, then they print more money to fight the war, then they debase the currency. Pretty soon, the currency isn't worth anything. People don't want to trade with them because they debased the currency, they inflated it away. And then at some point, the soldiers realize that the money they're being paid in is worthless, or the soldiers don't get paid. And when the soldiers don't get paid, they all mutiny or they desert. And then invariably, what happens then is someone outside of those borders wins the battle. And of course, that civilization blames their decline on the barbarians. It wasn't our fault. It was bad guys who speak a different language or have a different religion. They actually attacked us unprovoked. And the story is always bad people caused the collapse of our civilization. But the real story generally is the civilization got fat, dumb, and happy, and then they got arrogant, and then they started counterfeiting money, and then they forgot that you can't pay your own soldiers with counterfeit money. And somewhere between the people starving to death or all the soldiers deserting, they found that they weren't able to continue with the wars they were fighting. And then they lose the war. And then the next society rises, and then they do it all over again. And it happens. It's not a dozen times. It's not 100 times. If you read this, it's thousands and thousands of times you see the rise and the decline and the fall and the reemergence. There are always these common principles, and the principles have to do with power and energy, right? The societies that don't know how to, if you don't understand firepower, like the Japanese, they didn't really want to embrace guns, so they just passed a law, no guns. And then the Westerners showed up with guns. The same thing happened in China for a while, where they wanted to close their borders, and so they were against modern techniques. And then the Westerners show up with firepower, and then the borders get open, and then the political power structure collapses. At some point, someone comes up with a better cannon, and the people in denial lose the next battle, and then somebody comes up with a better ship, and then the people in denial have less sea power, and so they get choked to death, and then someone comes up with a tank, and then there's airplanes, and it goes on like that. It's always about harnessing power, harnessing and channeling energy, and you've got the physical energy, and that's how people win the wars, and then you have the economic energy. And all the really good societies, they manage to create trading networks on a strong currency that people trust, and then eventually the grandson of the person that set it up gets a bit cheaper, and then the great-grandkids get a bit cheaper. They start fighting amongst each other, then they debase the currency, then their armies desert them, and their trading partners don't want to trade with them, and all of the commercial energy bypasses them, and then they blame it on the barbarians, and it starts anew. So that's all in Will Durant. If you read it, and what you realize, there's just nothing new under the sun. Everything's been played out, and history is almost the story of a bunch of arrogant alpha males that are a bit ignorant, that think that this time it's different, and they were put on Earth to fix things. And they go, Alexander the Great goes gallivanting off, in his late teenage years. And of course, we call him the Great, but the joke is, after he basically, conquered 200 countries and lost all of his army, he died by age 33, and everything collapses within months after he's dead. So it's like you can do this stuff for a year, 2 years, 10 years, and then everything collapses under its own weight, and it goes on and on and on like that. So I really like listening to that or reading those histories. I think you can learn a lot from them. And the most useful thing you can learn is this is not the first time this has been done. In fact, it's common throughout human history. Every single civilization, it failed because either it couldn't channel power, it was less powerful technically from an engineering point of view, right? Or because it couldn't channel capital, like economic power, and its monetary systems were completely defective, or they were inferior, right? The society that trades glass beads gets stomped on by the society that trades metal coins, and the ones that trade gold coins stomp on the ones that trade copper coins. And then even then, you believe that gold is money. The Spaniards go off, conquer the New World, they bring back all the gold. It doesn't solve the problem because they inflate the gold supply by a factor of 5, so they created hyperinflation. Their own economy collapsed, and the Spanish Empire collapsed because they didn't understand the implications of inflating the money supply, and they figured that out the hard way 1700 years after the Romans figured it out, and they figured it out 500 years after the Greeks figured it out. And it happened in Egypt, and it happened in Assyria, and it happened in China. It's happened as many times as we can write it down, and it's probably happened 100,000 times that we didn't write down. And so I encourage people to read history, especially good political history, good economic history. And in 1500, they were using paintings as a store of value in Italy, right? That's an interesting thing that comes out, You'll find all of these principles just keep popping up. How do you find scarce, desirable assets to store your value in a portable fashion? And if you read it, then you'll say, wow, Bitcoin would have solved that problem. So, yeah, I think it's great. And I encourage people to read Durant and to read Rothbard smart and to read, pretty much any history written by, a reputable source. And do it now that you're an adult, because you understand things now that you didn't understand when you were in school, and it will resonate differently with you.